An icy wind howled high in the snowy mountains. Low clouds covered the sun. Seriously wounded, Zeke Draker heard a voice mockingly call him a fool who hoped to escape. Where did he take the ancient relic? Despite the fact that the man had lost both arms and was dying, he laughed and replied that no one in his place would have told this. His pursuing opponents were enraged by the arrogant bastard. One of them wanted to finish the guy on the spot, but the second stopped him. They need to contact the main squad. Through a magic crystal, he conveyed a message that they had caught the Northern Phantom and were asking for confirmation of their coordinates. The coordinates were confirmed, and the main detachment promised to arrive at the site soon. The hunters did not understand how their prey was still holding on, despite such wounds, and why did the Northern Phantom need a relic that the Emperor was hunting for? Although this idiot doesn't need a reason, he's just teasing everyone. Anger filled the men. They had suffered so much because of the Phantom, they wanted to repay him for their torment. Until the main force arrived, they could make the rest of his life miserable. They tossed a coin to decide who would torture the prisoner first. But Zeke Draker had other plans. He grabbed his hand, which was lying next to him, and put it to the wound. A magical flash ran across my hand. Zeke Draker was the first failed awakener in the family. Due to the fact that he was born into a family of Dragonslayers, with a body unable to use aura, he was unable to awaken like knights usually awaken. Therefore, he was thrown out of his father's house like some kind of garbage. That's why he tried everything to become stronger and survive. Zeke's hand grew back into place. He grabbed his sword and attacked his opponents. The coin was still flying in the air. One of the hunters caught it. Zeke Draker once heard a saying that if all you strive for is power, you'll end up with nothing left. He thought this was complete nonsense. This is what those who already have power say. The hunter, in his excitement, did not notice how their opponent appeared before them. He was determined to kill. One hunter's head flew off his shoulders, just as he was rejoicing that he had won. The second managed to grab his sword and desperately defended himself. But nothing could stop Zeke Draker. His blade pierced through the enemy and he fell with a cry of horror. The strong will give away the weak and take away everything that is possible. This is the truth of life. But the guy was not destined to escape. A large main detachment was already approaching the scene of events. People were whispering about how this irregular got his arm back. This is generally an abomination, but if you cut off his head, he will definitely die. Zeke Draker did not wait for further developments, but attacked the soldiers himself. A battle ensued. Although almost all the soldiers fell in this battle, Zeke Draker himself was seriously wounded by several swords. It seems he's finished. Blood gushed from the guy's mouth. Even though he was unable to take revenge, he managed to steal the relic, which was hunted by the Emperor himself. The man squeezed this artifact in his hand and raised it high. A dragon's head was carved on the stone. He asked Alicia for forgiveness, and the blood from his face dripped onto the ground. The end was near. At this moment, drops of blood fell on the artifact, which Zeke was still holding in his hand, and it sparkled with a yellow flickering light. The words to Zeke Draker rang through the air. His strong will is capable of awakening ancient power. The stone head of the dragon glowed more and more. The soul of the ancient dragon is imprinted in the will of the one who persists. Bright glare of light surrounded the dying man. They formed into vague outlines of a figure. The voice continued to say that measures had been taken due to the emergency. Is Zeke Draker willing to accept help? The man mistook the voice for auditory hallucinations, but nevertheless he whispered that he agreed to everything. Transparent hands, shrouded in light, touched his face. The voice joyfully said that consent had been received, and the irreversible promised power was activated. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3. Consciousness slowly left Zeke. Zeke Draker's biggest shock was that when he woke up, he looked like a child. It was difficult for him to believe that he had returned to the past. He still clearly remembered the sword being stabbed into him. The place where he found himself was very familiar. This was the Draker family's training center, the Cradle. The Draker family of Dragonslayers is one of the 3 great transcendent families. Therakan Draker is a hero who saved the continent by killing the evil dragon Bahamut during a war 1,000 years ago. His descendants founded the Draker family. All of the Draker family have an aura blessing. Perhaps this is because they are descendants of Terrigan Draker. Therefore, they have the opportunity to awaken their high-level aura and become knights. Everyone awakened the aura except Zeke Draker. The voice said that the administration system was rebooting. Zeke jumped in surprise. Did he hear it? The voice continued to say that the soul of the awakened one was confirmed and 100% attuned. With wide eyes, Zeke listened as the soul of the awakened one received the will of the ancient dragon and completely merged with it. He gained access to part of the system, and the system activated viewing the status window. The open windows of the system lit up in front of Zeke. The boy thought that he had probably somehow managed to activate the relic. He read that he now belongs to a rare class of healers, and his title is one who has received the blessing of an ancient dragon. Class skills: healing, calm mind, energy restoration. The rest of the skills, accurate strike, cut, critical hit, were at the beginner level. To Zeke's surprise, his hand could pass through this strange screen. He read the class skills. The teacher told him that in the turf, people divided themselves into classes, depending on what they were good at. Each class trained in a special technique known as a skill. If Zeke's class is a healer, then he can use healing. The boy decided to test his healing skills to make sure that what was written in the status window was true. Zeke raised his hand and it glowed. In his previous life, he became a healer in his 20s, right after the ethereal hall was opened. It turns out that his ethereal hall is already open. This delighted the boy. The lights of his aura scattered throughout the room. He now realized that even though his trained body was no longer there, he had returned to the past with his skills and memories. Compared to who he was before his regression, he is now in a better position. In order to take advantage of this benefit, Zeke decided to find out what he had at his disposal. But he was interrupted by a knock on the door. The boy had not read everything, but now his task was to remove this thing from public view. He shouted that he was busy, but Zeke Draker's only servant, Decker, entered the room uninvited. Decker couldn't believe the boy wasn't ready yet. What is he thinking about? Zeke asked what he should be prepared for, and noted to himself that the servant could not see the system window. This made the boy happy. Decker loomed over him like a rock, and menacingly asked how Mr. Zeke managed to forget everything. Zeke remembered being afraid of Decker as a child, and although he now had the brains of a 32-year-old man, childhood memories made him look at the servant with fear. The calm mind class skill was activated, and Zeke felt his head clear. All anxiety disappeared in an instant. Zeke Draker appreciated this useful skill. He carefully read the information in the system window, while Decker indignantly reprimanded him that he had forgotten about a very important event. Zeke replied that he remembered about the Pankration evolution test. All Drakers are trained at the Cradle Training Center, starting at the age of 7. They undergo rigorous basic training for 5 years. Instructors evaluate students each year in sword fighting, and no-holds-barred Pankration. The opponents are assigned by the instructor, but there have been cases when students themselves choose who they want to fight, provided that both agree. Due to the lack of rules, some will leave the fight with injuries, and some will not come out at all. But since it is at this competition that the class in which the students of the training center will be enrolled is determined, the children have no choice but to fight with all their might. The instructor spoke in front of the line of students. Everyone knew that this competition was the final component of the assessment. Senior instructor Panmark was pleasantly surprised that everyone present was in high spirits and gave the command to start the exam. Zeke stood in a line next to the rest of the students and heard them whispering that he should be ashamed to appear with everyone after his past humiliation. And was this loser really one of the direct descendants of Draker? The instructor called the first pair of fighters and the boys began the battle. From the very first minute, the stronger opponent's fist struck the opponent's jaw. Zeke sat in the front row and assessed the fighters. The outcome of the battle was clear to him. This is what happens when you don't take the right defensive position. Previously, he was very afraid of such tests, but now he clearly saw that all the students were nothing. The guy sitting opposite him suddenly saw Zeke Draker calmly yawn. From such a sight, the boy's eyes flashed with orange fire and he grinned menacingly. The instructor called Zeke Draker and his opponent Leyon. Both boys were ready, but Zeke walked toward the battlefield oddly relaxed. Leyon began to mock Zeke, asking if last year's humiliation was enough for him. Why is he here again? Leon Conrad was Zeke's rival almost every year, and every year, he forced the boy to beg for his life. The Conrad family believed that you had to be able to do dirty tricks to become a true Dragonslayer. Zeke wondered why this piece of crap was his cousin. In his past life, the 4 siblings in his direct bloodline had never had the opportunity to meet. However, there were more than a dozen cousins who took great joy in mocking Zeke Draker. Leon at this time suggested that Zeke participates in the competition every time because he is inferior and does not understand when to run away. The calm mind skill was activated, and Zeke listened with boredom to this fool who stood in front of him. But with his insults, Leon crossed the line, and Zeke warned him that today he would not stand on ceremony and would punch his cousin in the face. This made Leon laugh. What can a defective piece of shit do? He grabbed Zeke's head, and he was immediately thrown back by a strong blow. The critical hit skill has been activated. Zeke didn't even move. Leon grabbed his face and screamed desperately in pain and surprise. Zeke looked at his hand. He just wanted to throw a normal punch, but the skill activated itself. While it was difficult for the boy to control his abilities normally, the instructor ran up to Leyon along the way, scolding Zeke Draker. The signal to start the battle had not yet been given. Zeke was surprised. Who says, "Pay attention, prepare for a real battlefield. The advantage is on the side of the one who strikes first." Zeke laughed. Pockmark raised his head and looked at the boy. The instructor instilled in him a thirst for blood. Leyon said everything was fine. He can fight. He's going to kill this inferior bastard. Zeke felt that his opponent was too stupid to learn the lesson right away. As soon as the instructor gave the command to start the fight, Leyon rushed towards Zeke at breakneck speed and punched him in the face with all his might. Zeke was surprised. He was already scared, but Leyon's fists didn't hurt at all. True, you need to be wary of his left counterattack. Zeke launched a counterattack, but Leyon anticipated his movements and deftly dodged the blow, slipping under his opponent's arm. Then Leyon made a tackle and grabbed the boy by the leg, trying to throw him to the ground. In some incredible way, Zeke emerged from the grip and broke distance with Leyon. Pockmark was taken aback. What does he see? A 12-year-old cannot have such combat instincts. When Leyon dodged Zeke's counterattack and tried to knock him down, Mark thought Leyon would win. But Zeke punched Leyon in the chin and freed himself from his grip. Zeke was very calm, even though his counterattack failed. The boy demonstrated the concentration and precision required to deliver such a precise and effective strike. Is this the Zeke Draker he knew? Leyon angrily thought that he could not do anything against his opponent. At this time, Zeke kicked Leyon's thigh. The blow was unexpectedly strong. Leyon didn't understand how this bastard could become so strong, and Zeke was glad that this time he was able to control his power and not kill his cousin. The system activated Zeke's class skill heightened senses, and he was able to see, as if in slow motion, where his opponent's fist was flying. It was easy for Zeke to evade. He knew this feeling. Now that he has figured out how to control the ether, he can put an end to this fight. Diving under Leyon's hand flying at him, Zeke grabbed it. He turned the boy over with force and threw him to the ground. Activating the precise strike skill helped Zeke deal devastating damage to his cousin. This skill helped to hit the enemy's weak points. Leyon could not withstand such an onslaught and shouted that he was giving up. Under the amazed screams of the spectators, Zeke did not even think of stopping. After all, even an idiot like Leyon has to learn a lesson. Breathing heavily, Zeke stood up and advised Leyon to remember this for the rest of his life. He turned to the school students, who were staring at him in amazement, and shouted that it was time for them too to stop whispering about him. If they want to tell him something, let them come down one by one and say it straight to his face. One of the boys stood up and loudly announced that he was challenging Zeke Draker to Pankration. Jaken Wardek, another of Zeke's cousins, had something to say to his insolent cousin. Zeke thought this was a wonderful challenge, but it would be boring for them to fight alone. He proposes that Jaken's servant, Liam Stone, also go against him. In this case, Jaken will have at least some chance of not losing right away. Zeke laughed throughout the stadium. Jaken realized that this idiot had just humiliated him. Zeke happily confirmed this, and was surprised that his cousin was so smart. Jaken promised to beat the impudent boy to death. They entered the battlefield and the instructor strictly warned Zeke not to do anything ahead of time. Liam Stone accompanied his master, and Zeke looked at the servant with interest. It was a surprise to see him again. In his past life, Liam Stone was a mercenary king. As Jaken's servant, Liam attended the cradle and academy, but since he was a distant relative, he was left without education. He begged to be admitted to the Valhalla Academy of Higher Learning, but in the end, Liam joined the knightly order of the small state of Baranon. And as soon as Baranon fell, Leyon became a mercenary. But in troubled times, people reach for the strong. After a long stint as a mercenary, he became a Red Knight and founded his own guild, the Stone Mercenaries. Under his leadership, he united the largest groups of mercenaries, which is why he was nicknamed their king. When the Empire hired Stone's mercenaries, Liam entered the Continental Wars, and Zeke, along with the Northerners, faced Liam on the battlefield. But in this life, everything can turn out differently. Pockmark gave the signal and Jaken attacked his cousin. Zeke quickly blocked the blow flying at him, and holding Jaken's hand, said with displeasure that he asked the opponents to attack at the same time. With one jerk, Jaken freed his hand and indignantly declared that he would not play along with the idiot's cheap tricks. Without finishing his sentence, he launched a side kick, aiming for the opponent's head, but Zeke deftly blocked this blow, putting up a defense. Jaken jumped back, astonished. He did not expect such agility from his cousin, and Zeke advised Jaken to take a good look next time before hitting. With these words, he rushed to the attack. The boy's entire body was shrouded in bursts of his strong aura. Seeing a fist flying at him, Jaken covered his face with his hands. He was too scared and could not understand that the Kudak was just a deception. The boy missed a strong blow to his leg. Continuing to attack Jaken, Zeke explained to him why he and the servant should have attacked him together. Because alone Jaken Vardek is nothing. Jaken screamed in desperation for Oyam to come to his aid and finish off the idiot. Although Liam was only 12 years old, like all boys, he was much taller and stronger. Zeke knew that the most unpleasant thing about fighting him was his insane scope. Liam Stone had very long and strong arms. If he attacks first, Zeke won't be able to do anything. The boy placed a protective block near his face and got ready. It was necessary to be the first to take the initiative, and he struck the enemy. His cut skill was activated, which helped unleash a barrage of attacks on the opponent, preventing him from seeing. It seemed like Zeke Draker was attacking from all sides at once. The instructor and spectators looked at what was happening with long faces. Of course, they had never seen anything like this, northern fist-fighting techniques in the Midlands, where swords reigned supreme. But Zeke's body was failing him. He hadn't really done anything yet, but he was already out of breath. The joints screamed that they could not stand it. But the reason was not only Zeke, but also Liam Stone's monstrous physical training. No counterattacks or evasions, he simply endures without losing his vigilance. When he was the mercenary king, he was more aggressive. Now it was clear to Zeke how strong the enemy was, and Zeke's body was at its limit. He needed to get his opponent out of control. He gathered all the power of ether and aura into one blow and struck it. Liam dodged, which seemed impossible. Zeke knew for sure that Liam Stone did not see the broadcast with his own eyes. All the fighters here have crazy instincts. Liam grabbed the boy's hand and threw him. His strength was incredible. The enhanced senses skill helped Zeke predict his opponent's movements and escape from the hold. He managed to capture Liam himself. He squeezed his neck with his knees. No matter how strong an opponent's body is, no one can last long without oxygen. But it wasn't that simple. Liam landed several hard blows to Zeke's body, and he was able to loosen his grip on his neck. After this, the opponents dispersed and continued to beat each other. Both boys were in the final stages of fatigue, but Liam clearly won because he was bigger and stronger. Jaken was jubilant. Liam destroyed Zeke Draker. The next day, Decker, Zeke's servant, said that he heard that his master was injured during Pankration. And although Zeke denied it, the servant insistently asked to let him listen to the boy's pulse. Zeke realized that Decker wanted to check if the boy had awakened his aura. When he took his hand, he saw that the boy's aura was glowing blue. It transferred to Decker's hand. This startled the servant. Is the guy really a blue knight? Decker carefully tested the boy's inner strength. Giving another person an aura is difficult in itself. But if a person is able to control his aura so precisely, then he is most likely a blue knight. Not all knights are the same. They are divided according to their combat skills and ability to control aura. White swordsman is beginner level. Most children are white swordsmen before the blessing ceremony. At the level of the yellow swordsman are those who have awakened their aura and discovered the source of inner strength. All students of the cradle become yellow swordsmen after the blessing ceremony. Once they can freely control their aura, they can receive the title of knight. At the purple knight level, it is possible to strengthen your sword with an aura. The blue knight can manifest an aura blade, and the kingdom of those who went beyond their limits. The kingdom that the mercenary king Liam Stone and Zeke Draker reached before the red knight regressed. There are also black knights, but there are only a couple of these monsters. Decker continued to check Zeke's pulse, and the boy wondered how such an experienced man became his servant. But he still wouldn't be able to detect Zeke's ether. Only 2 people in this world can use it. Releasing his master's hand, Decker directly asked what the boy was hiding from him. He replied that it was more likely that Decker was hiding something from him. There was an awkward silence. Zeke interrupted him. He was just joking, don't pay attention to it. Decker asked why his charge had changed so much. Zeke thought the question was wrong. Why did he change only now was the question Decker had to ask him. From now on, a lot will change. Everything will fall into its rightful place. All the servant has to do is follow Zeke. Decker understood everything and bowed to the young master. He prepared the training room as the boy had asked him to do. Zeke left the room, thinking that if Decker was assigned to keep an eye on him, he should be kept close to him in order to extract information. The problem was that Zeke didn't know who had ordered him to be looked after. The boy didn't think it was someone from his mother's side, perhaps one of the brothers and sisters. He entered his personal training room and checked the system messages. The cut skill has been upgraded to advanced. Maybe it has something to do with the frequency of its use. The skill activated itself during the battle. It turns out Zeke had him before. And if he learns something new, will a new skill be added? And what is the difference between just a skill and a class skill? They are activated in the same way. Dragon skills cannot be displayed at all, and require 10 karma points to unlock, and they can only be obtained by destroying monsters. There is darkness in their dungeons, but Zeke needs to become a purple knight to get there. He was interested in why he regressed into the past and what kind of system it was. These skills and class told him that everything was connected to that ancient relic. But the boy had so little information. He decided to put all questions aside for now and start training to become stronger. There are 2 known forces in the world, the aura of knights and the mana of magicians. Knights strengthen their aura in dungeons, magicians strengthen their mana with the help of circles. These 2 forces are on opposite ends of the spectrum, so by awakening one, a person will not be able to awaken the other. Unfortunately for Zeke, he was unable to awaken either one. His family kicked him out, and during his wanderings he met a master who gave him a lot of different knowledge. The most useful thing he learned was healing and the etheric hall. Thanks to the ether chamber, which the master developed, Zeke Draker was able to control the energy of nature, the ether. He and the master are the only ether users in the world. The boy was intensely training with the sword, but after 2 hours he was so tired that he could faint. He wiped his hands bloody. The system activated the class skill, healing, and the blood stopped flowing from the boy's hands along the hilt of the sword. Healing is a very rare skill that Zeke didn't even know about until he met his teacher. If a guy used it in front of people, they would look at him like he was crazy. That's why he couldn't use this skill against Leyon. He had to treat himself after he returned to his room. Now that he felt much better, Zeke Draker decided to continue training. A week later in the cafeteria, everyone was discussing the changes that had happened to Zeke. Many believed that he used black magic, and they hoped that the guy would be able to pacify the stronger guys. Children of rich parents dined separately from the rest. A good table was set for them. Raina Turin gnawed at the meat fiercely. 4 comrades discussed a plan for further action over lunch. Owen Zimmons told his neighbor that he needed to eat better, so he could have the energy to fight with swords. Zeke's cousin, beaten on the battlefield, was irritated and did not listen to anyone's advice. The whole company thought about only one person, Zeke Draker. The guy really ruined their appetite. This Pankration was brutal, but quite impressive. However, when it comes to sword fighting, everything changes. This idiot can't even hold a sword. The mood of some of the dinner participants improved at this thought. Zeke is so weak that he had to buy a special sword because the normal one is too heavy for him. Leon Conrad believed that there was no point at all in the fact that he lost to this non-entity. This freak is just lucky. Raina Turin jumped indignantly when she heard these words. If they all really think that way, then they have no right to be Knights of House Draker. With these words, Raina left the dining room. Unlike Pankration, real swords are used in sword duels, and this is the cause of most of the incidents in the cradle. This is also where the difference in students' skills shines through, and a month after the final exams, the blessing ceremony will begin, during which the Drakers awaken their aura. The instructor called Zeke Draker to the battlefield, and the boy came out carrying a huge sword on his shoulder. Raina Turin came out to meet him. Her gaze expressed determination and mercilessness. She shouted that she was choosing Zeke Draker as her opponent. Zeke pulled out his sword and pointed it at the girl. He accepted the challenge. Raina drew her sword. She was amazed at how easily Zeke handled the huge claymore sword. Now that she looked at her opponent, she saw that this was not the Zeke Draymore she knew. He could hardly hold the sword correctly. Did he awaken the aura, and that's why he grew so big? She pushed all thoughts aside. The guy won't be able to intimidate her. Zeke was confident that he could handle it, but fighting the Lightning Knight was not an easy task. Raina Turin is known as the Knight of Lightning and made a name for herself during the Continental Wars. She was also noted as one of the greatest Drakers of the next generation, as she awakened her aura even before receiving the blessing. Zeke believed that Raina awakened her aura several years ago, but did not use it. I didn't want to overstep my principles. The fight began and Raina attacked. Zeke blocked her attack with his sword, and he broke the distance between them. He remained out of reach of Raina's sword. The girl attacked again, but the place where she directed her blow was already empty. Zeke again avoided direct contact. He didn't expect his opponent to be so good. The stands shouted at Raina to finish off her opponent. Many thought that the girl was deliberately playing with the enemy. Zeke blocked Raina's kick again. Few understood that Raina was not playing, but was fighting a difficult battle. Zeke knocked down the girl's sword and sparks flew from the collision of blades. Even though Zeke held his own well, Raina saw gaps in his sword skills. But no matter how quickly she tried to take advantage of the moment, his sword blocked her attacks, as if the guy had predicted her actions. And immediately after, another gap opened up. Raina realized that this all reminded her of a training match that was meant to train her. Two swords collided in the air, sparks scattered throughout the field, and Raina flew far back, unable to withstand the force of the enemy's blow. Zeke looked at her boredly. So this is how the Lightning Knight fought in the cradle. She fights honestly. This is to be expected from someone who values her principles, but this is what holds her back. Zeke Draker decided to help Raina come out of her shell. He took an extremely low stance. Raina realized that the guy wanted to close the gap one at a time, but he shouldn't underestimate her speed. However, Zeke very quickly closed the distance between them, and Raina managed to dodge his blow. Zeke's sword plowed the ground, but Zeke didn't stop. He attacked the girl again, and his sword touched Raina's shoulder. At the same moment, a light blue light tore the sword from the boy's hands. His blade flies high up. The audience rejoiced at Raina's victory. She proved that Zeke Draker is a loser. No one noticed that Raina was using her aura. Only Pockmark noticed this. As Zeke's sword approached her, she resorted to using an aura that was barely noticeable, but Raina promised not to use aura until she entered the academy. This guy forced Raina Turin to give up her principles. The girl was very depressed. Zeke appeared next to her and told her that it was not over yet. He hit the girl with all his might. Blood sprayed from her mouth. The spectators shouted that such cheap tricks should not be used in sword fighting. They were outraged that they would never become a knight, but Zeke was confident that he still won. Maybe Raina Turin wants to continue the fight? The girl rose to her feet with difficulty. She hasn't lost yet. He only hit her because she let her guard down. She was taken aback by such a thought. If Zeke had had a dagger in his hand, everything would have ended badly. To the entire stadium, Raina Turin admitted defeat. Zeke Draker was recently called trash, but now he has defeated one of the most talented students of the famous family, Raina Turin. In the burning city, soldiers collected corpses and wrapped them in burlap, and they threw them into the dungeon, which was already almost full. Inside the house, a man was calmly drinking tea. His interlocutor could not understand how Abel could be so cold-blooded in this situation. After all, they wrote to him that that bastard Zeke Draker defeated Raina. The one whom the man called Abel put the cup on the table and stood up. He asked how much time was left before the blessing ceremony. His interlocutor replied that until the next full moon. Abel considered it was time to pay a visit to the family and left the room. His interlocutor was surprised that he would go alone. The incident piqued Abel's curiosity. He was interested to know what kind of awakening their youngest would go through. Zeke's victory sent the entire cradle into shock, and he simply returned to the training room and continued his training. A month later, on the day of the blessing ceremony, Zeke washed himself and wondered how he became the Red Knight in a past life with such an unfortunate body. He opened the status window and thought, once his skill level exceeds expert, the level will increase. He even managed to improve his proficiency in deadly steps, a skill he gained during the duel. Decker shouted to the guy from behind the door that they were leaving in 2 hours. Zeke promised that he would join soon. He got into the carriage, and a string of horses drove the carriages towards the city. Soldiers guarded this caravan. Zeke thought, looking boredly out the window, that he had not been to the main estate for a long time. It belongs to the Draker family, and is located in the territory of the Duchy of Troy. The family's main residence is located in the heart of the continent, in the Fortress of the Four Seasons in the Middle Lands. But the blessing ceremony must be held in the main estate, where the legend of the Dragonslayer originated. The students entered the large hall and lined up on the carpet. Zeke had never realized or thought about it before, that all the spectators are famous people who are often written about in news bulletins. The Draker family probably sent someone to keep an eye on Zeke. Whatever their intentions, when they see that he is unable to awaken, they will simply ignore him. Suddenly, in the crowd of people, he saw a man who could not be here. The boy's face turned black with anger. Why is this bastard here? Many greeted the man who came and asked what brought him here. The second son of the Draker family, Lionblade Abel Draker, replied that he had come to see his beloved younger brother. The brothers met their gaze. Zeke knew his brother was more suited to the title of Butcher than Lionblade. The guy understood that in any case he could not do anything, and it was best to calm down. In his previous life, Abel would never have come to the blessing ceremony. Does this mean Zeke's actions changed the future? Perhaps this is his chance. The judges gave the command to begin the ritual and called the first candidate Aaron. Thought approached a pool of water, near which stood a statue of a knight with a huge sword. The boy raised his jacket sleeve high, and he lowered his hand into the clear blue water. The boy's palm ran into a sharp thorn that stuck out under the water and was stained with blood. A blue glow began to rise from the bowl and enveloped the statue of the knight. Aaron was in pain and scared. His face was distorted, but he endured. With the help of a blessing ritual, each member of the Draker family awakened his sealed aura when he was forced to leave the cradle at the age of 12. Aaron did a good job. His aura shone throughout the entire room. Compared to ordinary knights who awaken after 20 years, this was incredibly fast. Mark called the next student. There are some rare cases where, along with their aura, students have awakened the Dragonslayer trait known as mana suppression. As Raina performed the ritual, the mana lamps began to blink. These people would become as strong as the yellow knights, although some could rival the red and black ones. Pure blood awakens in them. Due to mana suppression, they are required to use special gloves made by the family. Otherwise, they will not be able to live a normal life. Raina received these gloves. This recognized will be provided with unimaginable support from the Draker family. It's time for Zeke Draker to undergo the rites. Everyone was very interested in looking at him, and Zeke himself thought that this was the second time he was standing in front of this damned statue. Last time was terrible. Zeke embarrassed himself in front of everyone. However, this time everything is different. Zeke Draker can not only heal but also control the ether. He put his hand into the bowl. On top of that, he didn't give up. He stood up for himself. And he really asked that the bronze statue take care of him. The statue glowed with a silvery light as Zeke's hand plunged into the water. The water in the bowl began to bubble, and that was the end of it. This has never happened before. The spectators whispered in surprise, and only Abel Draker remained silent. Zeke pulled his hand out of the water. You shouldn't expect anything to change. He looked angrily towards his brother. Because of him, he became overconfident. A flood of voices filled the hall. The guy couldn't wake up. How did he defeat Raina then? Probably used some kind of trick. He disgraced the family. Zeke was walking towards the exit and thinking that there were still many ways to become stronger, when suddenly the system came to life. She reported that there was a hitch in determining the class due to missing information. His healer class is now unlocked. Cries of surprise were heard behind Zeke Draker. The knight statue glowed red. Spectators whispered that they were seeing the awakening of a pureblood. The guy starts out immediately as a red knight. The system informed Zeke, who stood near the statue in the rays of golden light, that the blessing of the ancient dragon sealed in the soul of the user had been activated. Abel Draker watched this scene with wide eyes. The system didn't stop. Zeke read that Kin's talent, the blood of a fighter, awakened in him, and thanks to the combination of rare talents, a new unique class was created. The immortal has awakened. The audience saw a golden glow. This has never happened before. Purebloods woke up differently. No one saw the windows of the system, and Zeke understood that many would have doubts. But if he says something here, it will turn against him. Viewers noticed that the mana lamps were in order. Maybe the sword statue was broken. If the mana was not suppressed, then this is wrong. Abel interrupted these disputes. He suggested being glad that 2 purebloods woke up at once, and this is a great reason to celebrate such an event. They brought gloves to Zeke. The boy put them on and felt that they were quite thick. Zeke Draker knew his brother's character very well, but for now he would have to accept his help. Mark completed the blessing ceremony and invited everyone to the holiday. Everyone except Zeke happily rushed to the party site. Zeke wanted to find a training room nearby, but Abel stopped him. Zeke didn't expect his brother to talk to him so soon. Abel invited him to the holiday, and he extended his hand to congratulate the boy on his pureblood awakening. His whole appearance expressed sincerity and joy. Zeke knew that if he didn't shake his brother's hand, he would interpret it as hostility, but he couldn't bring himself to raise his hand to meet Abel's. Even to save face, he couldn't shake the bastard's hand. Abel sighed, and said that there was nothing to be done about it. He would have to be content with just a meeting. He patted his brother on the shoulder and left. Zeke was sure that this would not end, and they would see each other more than once. In the reception hall, guests discussed the ceremony. Zeke's golden glow was quite shocking. This is the first time this has happened. At first everyone thought that he had not woken up. And where is the hero of the occasion? Zeke went to his chambers with relief. He could not withstand such a heavy atmosphere. Now he needed to figure out what was wrong with him. All purebloods have the ability to suppress mana. This ability proves that a person can resist dragons, the source of mana. However, since most machines use mana as fuel, purebloods must wear gloves. If Zeke were a purebred, there would be gaps as soon as he took off his gloves. He brought up a status window in which he read that he had the skill of not suppressing, but reflecting mana. The mana reflection skill creates a distortion field that nullifies nearby mana. Before the ritual, Zeke Draker was a healer, and now he is a unique immortal. All graduates had awakenings with a blue aura. Only Raina had a red glow when she woke up. Zeke's glow was also red at first, but then it changed to gold. The system reported that the classification terminal has lost important information. By terminal, did you mean the bronze statue? As soon as the system entered the information, the statue glowed red. Zeke even began to sweat from what he understood. The bronze statue does not determine whether a person is awakened or not. It determines the user's predisposition, his class. Red is a rare class. Gold is unique. The statue is an ancient relic, used even before Therakin, the founder of the Draker family. Nowadays, the concept of class does not exist. Therefore, it was only used to check whether a person was awakened or not. They misinterpreted the red glow, which meant the rare class and the awakening of purebloods. And not a single head of the family realized this. Zeke sat in deep thought in front of the open system window. Now he has karma points. He decided to use them to gain new skills. The system opened them, and Zeke happily saw that he had received dragon vision and the power of a dragon. Unfortunately, the boy did not have enough points with the devourer skill, which allowed him to eat a lot of food and digest it. He did not dare to activate the dragon's power. It could be dangerous here, and activated the dragon's vision. For a moment, golden circles with strange writing flashed before his eyes, and it all ended immediately. The guy expected more from this skill, but nothing changed. Although he decided to go out onto the balcony and gasped in surprise. His eye lit up with a golden light. It seemed to him that the statue that stood in the center of the large garden was now right in front of him. This could be really helpful. Zeke returned to the room, and the system asked him again if he needed information about the detected object. She began to provide information about every object that came into Zeke's field of vision. A carpet made in the Empire of Darkness, an olive wood desk from the Lovern dynasty. Zeke fell into a chair exhausted. His body could not withstand such stress. The system independently activated the healer skill, and Zeke felt better. He began to study the information again, and he saw that all his class skills had turned into passive ones, and their level had increased by 1. Now his body will regenerate on its own. This is a passive ability. Zeke was excited about the new possibilities. He may seem to have already mastered healing, but it is not something that can be constantly neglected. In addition, the healing effect is limited, and the healing factor is endless. He decided to check it out right away and grabbed a fruit peeler. With this knife, he slashed his hand. The healing factor was activated, and the wound healed before our eyes. With such abilities, Zeke Draker was confident that he would graduate from the academy not in 5 years, but in 2 years. Draker Academy is the most famous knight academy on the continent. Anyone is willing to sacrifice everything to get here. The Duchy of Troy, where the academy is located, is bustling with life in the spring when the new semester begins. Students with higher rankings are no different from adults. They are all trained to perfection. Among the many families supporting the Draker family, the 3 families that have the most influence are called the Great Families. The Turin family is a model of strength. Its coat of arms is a bull, and the brightest representative is Raina Turin. Zimans are representatives of wisdom, and their emblem is a snake. The Vardeks are the richest family, and the children from these 3 families take advantage of their position. Zeke Draker moved into the high-ranking dormitory Platinum Mansion. Of course, it's nice to be a purebred. The Platinum Mansion is equipped with a study hall, library, and other amenities. All this is available only to high-ranking students. Even from the cradle, it is not easy to get here. As for the pure-blooded awakened ones, they are given a special privilege. Master of the floor. The entire floor is known as Platinum. Numerous servants greeted Mr. Zeke Draker. Zeke thought skeptically that even for purebloods, this was too much. In the rooms to which Zeke was shown, Decker was already waiting for him. He handed the guy the box, in which lay a pair of gloves. They were more comfortable than those that were given to him after the blessing ceremony. Zeke decided that since he had a pair of new gloves, it would be a good idea to upgrade his sword. Due to the close proximity of the Duchy of Troy to the Mountains of Giants, there are a lot of high-quality materials and skilled craftsmen here. According to rumors, the first weapon of Academy graduates is a Trojan. Zeke told Decker that he had an excellent swordmaker in mind and would be happy to meet him. The guy handed the servant a note with the master's name so that he could arrange a meeting. Decker had never heard of Galleon Hulbert before. He promised to contact him now. After Decker left, reminding the master to remember to memorize the class schedule, Zeke began to think that the Platinum Etal was completely isolated, and he would have much more freedom to develop his dragon skills. There was a knock on the door, and a maid came in calling Zeke Draker to dinner on behalf of Raina Turin. Zeke went to Raina with a silent question. He didn't expect this invitation. When he saw who was greeting him, he almost burst out laughing. Is this some kind of southern cartel? Raina sat in a chair surrounded by strong guys. She welcomed Zeke Draker. The girl apologized for the fact that people in her family are a little peculiar. Zeke sat down in a chair near the table and thanked Raina in return for the invitation. He saw that Raina had control of her aura and was apparently preparing to become a purple knight. While the girl was discussing the menu, Zeke wondered why Raina's sword skills had stagnated. At lunch, Zeke was amazed by Raina's appetite. He himself ate a lot, but the girl surpassed him. After lunch, Raina got down to business. She asked Zeke to accept the support of the Turin family. Zeke didn't understand what she was talking about. They are both pure awakened ones. Raina realized that the guy had the wrong idea about purebloods. Indeed, they have many privileges. The platinum floor alone is proof of this. But they do not receive any benefits in terms of their development. The Academy has accumulated centuries-old theoretical and practical knowledge, and has a personal instructor to effectively improve your abilities. And if this is not the case, then no matter how capable you are, you will fall behind. This is why support is needed. Even Abel Draker, a fellow pureblood, the youngest ever to receive the title of White Knight and current Black Knight, received support from his maternal family, the Simmons family. Although the head of the Turin family did not explain the reason to Raina, he said that Zeke would not receive support from his maternal family. Therefore, she asks him to accept the support of the Turin family. Raina furrowed her brows when Zeke flatly refused her offer. Is he a fool to refuse such a lucrative offer? Zeke stood up from the table and prepared to leave. He doesn't need anything beyond what he, as a purebred awakened one, already has. And in gratitude for dinner, he will give Raina advice. Her sword has too much power. He waved his hand, and a waterfall of leaves falling from the trees began to swirl around him. Zeke continued the lesson. Her greatest strength is the mobility that comes from her flexible body. She does not need to attack head-on and crush her opponents with force. It is enough for her to smoothly repel enemy attacks to the side and deliver single delicate blows. If she can do this, she will become several times stronger than she is now. With his last words, Zeke thanked Raina for lunch and left. Raina slammed her fist on the table. The Turin family is the personification of strength. She was simply following her family's traditions. And it's not that she pays attention to others. Raina thought about it. Zeke is essentially right. She was obsessed with the idea of becoming a person worthy of bearing the name Turin. This is what unintentionally affected her sword. Zeke Draker could see it. She picked up the piece of paper that had fallen on the table. When she was very little, everyone said that she was a genius, but no one gave her a single piece of practical advice. So who is this Zeke Draker? The paper in her hand broke in half. Zeke Draker, for his part, did not think about Raina Turin. He was glad that his skills showed incredible effectiveness. Even though he's been fussing all night, he's fine. The passive skill infinite stamina was very good. In his previous life, being at the academy had been a living hell for him. But now that he had awakened as a pureblood, he thought it was heaven. Money and power, of course, are not everything in this life, but they make life much more enjoyable. At this time, Zeke was called out by Owen. The guy was not very happy to see his cousin. Owen Simmons, third son of the Simmons family, one of the three great families. Since fraud is the Simmons' specialty, Owen used others to bully Zeke Draker and cunningly maintain his image. But now Owen was politeness itself. He asked why Zeke didn't come to dinner with him. Maybe he didn't receive the invitation. Zeke remembered that there was some kind of envelope on the table in his chambers. He asked in surprise whether he was obliged to respond to invitations to everyone he met. One of the guys who accompanied Owen said that the guy should behave more politely. After all, the young master is very kind to him. Zeke Drakero looked at the big guy who reprimanded him. He didn't recognize the guy and asked who he was. However, this didn't matter to Zeke, and without waiting for an answer, he went to the dorm. The servant wanted to show off in front of his master, but he shouldn't forget who he was talking to. A powerful blow using aura threw Zeke aside. The big man shouted that his name was Durban Roswell. He was also called Durban the Mighty, and he would teach the upstart a lesson. Zeke laughed. It's funny that a cadet who isn't even a knight has a nickname. And what? Mighty. He attacked Durban with lightning speed. He didn't even notice when the guy managed to close the distance between them. Waves of ether enveloped Zeke's figure and dealt a severe blow to Durban. Blood sprayed from his nose and mouth. Durban fell, throwing up a mountain of dust in the air, and Zeke stepped back from him and asked, "Who wants to try to fight him next?" Let young Mr. Owen Simmons make a hasty choice. They made eye contact with their cousin. Owen noted that Zeke Draker certainly enjoys basking in his fame. After that, the whole company left, leaving Zeke alone in the academy courtyard. Draker Academy is divided into two classes. The regular classes teach those who have no talent. These cadets have to work hard to achieve anything. Here they adhere to a strict regime from morning to night. There is also a special class that can freely choose items other than basic ones. At the academy, the place where the greatest elite gather is a special class. Zeke, who was placed in this special class, had some expectations, But now he looked boredly at the students around him. Most were cradle graduates. The most ordinary class, where is it special? The lesson has begun. The teacher reported that someone completely exceptional came to the first-year special class. He not only served as commander-in-chief during the war with the Eastern Empire 20 years ago. The students understood who the teacher was talking about, and their eyes sparkled. The teacher continued that the guest became a hero who stopped the invasion of the empire thanks to his resourcefulness. Dean of the Academy, Howard Draker, greeted the students. War hero Howard Draker. He is also revered as a tactical genius. But the truth is that the information he gave to the enemy to save his own skin simply shocked the enemy. This man is a traitor who just got lucky. Zeke knew that this was a rat, not a hero. And because of him, Zeke was kicked out of the academy in his previous life. He had lost the only place left to which he could belong. He had to wander throughout the Duchy of Troy. Eventually, Zeke was captured and sold to the Southern Cartel. Zeke vowed that he would definitely repay the dean for his misfortunes. The dean, meanwhile, finished his welcoming speech, and the teacher told all the cadets to take their swords and go to the arena to begin basic training. Everyone lined up in a special class indoor arena. Zeke couldn't imagine that even a special class should learn the art of dragon slaying. In his previous life, due to his inability to use aura, he spent 2 years learning something that would take an ordinary person 3 months. The Rose Knight Andre Draker began to teach them the art of killing dragons. The cadets whispered that the Uktil was so young, and his uniform was the official Draker uniform. Despite the fact that Andre is not a purebred awakened, he graduated from the academy ahead of schedule, and graduated from Valhalla with honors. He is a once-in-a-century genius who was given the name Draker. Zeke knew this guy in a past life. He noted that the teachers in the special class are at a high level, and Andre is also known for his unyielding character. The teacher ordered to be quiet, and everyone fell silent. If they are done chatting, he will start the lesson. Everyone drew their swords. Zeke also reached for his sword behind his back. At this time, the teacher asked what kind of sword he had. Zeke Draker took out his sword and made several quick swings with it. When he stopped, he raised the sword in the air and replied that it was an ordinary training sword. Nothing special. Andrew Draker opened his eyes wide and ordered Cadet Zeke Draker to enter the arena. The sword was the size of a cadet. At the arena, the teacher asked if the guy knew that weapons should be selected according to the capabilities of his body. Of course Zeke knew, so he deliberately pulled out his sword to stand out among the students. He decided that it would be easier if he showed his skills right away and told the teacher that he was confident that he could defeat him with this sword. Andre Draker was shocked by what he just heard. Zeke activated the mental defense class skill, and Andre fell under its influence. He offered the impudent student a competition, and if he could touch his body with his blade at least once, then the guy will be exempt not only from punishment for his rudeness, but also from lessons in the art of destroying dragons. The figure of Andre Draker was painted with a crimson glow. He drew his sword, and he promised the cadet that he would not use his aura against him. Zeke could defeat Andre because he knew his weaknesses, but given that Abel is constantly watching him, drawing attention to himself is quite dangerous. Zeke made the decision to try to hurt Andre and lose. He got into a fighting stance. He raised his sword, which seemed about to hit Andre Draker in the neck, but he knocked the blade away in one movement, just as Zeke expected. Of course, it won't be easy with such an opponent. After which, Zeke Draker rushed with a sword around the motionless Andre. The teacher reflected all his blows with one movement. Viewers discussed how Knight's spokesman Draker is on a completely different level. Zeke jumps around him for half an hour and was never able to touch him with his sword. However, the battle continued, and Andre was surprised at the endurance of this guy. Although he suppressed his aura, it was simply impossible to imagine him losing to a child. Andre was already starting to get angry. Truly, the existence of purebloods is unfair. Andre continued to fend off Zeke's blows, who knew that his opponent's weakness was his weak stamina, and the fact that he suppresses his own mana does not help him. The Draker's aura cultivation method is known for its peculiarity. The aura is activated during training, performing daily tasks, while eating and even sleeping. This state becomes an integral part of life, just like breathing. Roughly speaking, suppressing his aura, Andre practically stopped breathing, and Zeke continued to attack his opponent. Unconventional swordplay further reduces stamina. At this time, Andre parried the blow with such force that sparks fell from the blades. Zeke could not withstand such rebuff and flew back. He barely managed to hold the sword in his hands. It seemed to him that losing in this way was not entirely right. He took a low stance and gripped his sword tightly. He needed to force Andre to use aura at all costs. Instantly closing the distance, he struck with his sword, but Andre blocked his blow. There is no use in making attacks that can be easily dealt with. Zeke jumped high. He needed to do something that would make Andre unconsciously use the aura. Zeke turned over in the air. Andre watched him with a blank look. Zeke created an extreme situation and activated the swift step skill. Andre immediately recognized this skill, but did not know where the boy got it from. This is simply impossible. Finding himself behind the enemy, Zeke activated the critical strike skill, while Andre wondered how the cadet knew about swift steps. At the last moment he noticed Zeke's attacker, their eyes meeting. Andre activated the aura, and one of the arts of killing dragons. A piece of the sky sparkled on Andre's sword. The aura enveloped the entire fighter and gave him a very menacing appearance. A jubilant Zeke felt himself being sucked into a powerful whirlpool, and he is thrown to the far end of the training arena. He turned on the healing skill. The fight was not easy for him, and he passed out. After Andre's blow, the guy plowed a pretty furrow in the arena. Doctors ran to Zeke, and Andre said that this cadet may not attend his classes. If anyone else wants to be liberated, let them come into the arena. There were no takers. Then the lesson begins. Zeke Draker lay in the hospital room and admitted that everything turned out very well for him. Even though he didn't hurt Andre, he forced him to use his aura and recognize the guy's abilities. As a result, Andre was punished, and Zeke had free time. Andre's final attack was the most basic technique in the art of dragon slaying. Chapter 1, Verse 1, A Piece of Heaven. However, since this technique was used by the Blue Knight, its power was simply incredible. Regardless, Zeke still cannot defeat the Blue Knight, even with his limitless stamina and healing ability. The guy didn't know how, but he had to acquire unstoppable strength in order to live freely, like a bird that flies where it wants, and which will not allow anyone to subjugate him. His thoughts were interrupted by a cheerful voice. A man approached the bed and joyfully said that he was glad to see his son Arthur. The man took a sip from the bottle he had brought with him, and Zeke looked at him and wondered who it could be. He could not sense the man's approach, despite the strong smell of alcohol. At this time, the stranger said that the guy had the same eyes as that bastard Arthur. Zeke heard the word bastard and did not believe that this stranger was talking about the current head of the Draker family. He carefully asked who his guest was. He in turn asked how such a kid could do this. The stranger took another sip from the bottle when Zeke asked what his guest meant. The man did not believe that Zeke did not understand him. The boy was seriously injured recently, and now his wound has disappeared. How did this happen? Zeke went cold. Did this guy feel the healing factor? Just in case, Zeke activated his indomitable mental defense. But he was sure that there was no one at the academy who knew about healing. He replied that he did not understand what the stranger was talking about. He laughed. Is the kid going to continue this performance? An unknown person struck Zeke in the neck with the edge of his palm. The guy instantly dodged the fatal blow. He realized that in front of him was a hired killer. Zeke snatched the sheet from the bed, and he spun it, hiding himself from the killer's gaze. He then threw the sheet over the attacker's head. He became even more amused. Does your baby have different tricks in his arsenal? All of Zeke's instincts were screaming. All of his skills, swift steps, accurate strike, and critical strike were activated. Zeke grabbed the sword he was carrying and rushed to the attack. If he doesn't kill, they will kill him. The visitor took the sheet off his head, stopped the sword flying at him with one hand, and said that the guy's ability to adapt to the situation was impressive. He often saw the same thing with mercenaries. Zeke screamed to himself, "Who the hell is this guy?" They stood opposite each other in the hospital room. The stranger was fiddling with the sheet and the sword that he had taken from Zeke. Zeke was furious. They called him a mercenary. Does this guy know anything about his life? His opponent twirled the sword in his hands and mockingly said that Draker threw his blade and retreated. He returned the sword to Zeke and said that the guy was more suitable for the role of a mercenary than a knight. Zeke Draker hadn't felt this way since his time with his teacher. There is a huge difference between his abilities and the guest's skills. If he wanted, he could easily finish the guy off. He's at least on par with the Red Knight. He looked carefully at the stranger and decided that he was stronger than the Red Knight. At this time, the guest continued the conversation and discussed the merits of Zeke's sword and noted that the guy was talented since he wielded such a sword. Footsteps were heard behind the door, and Andre Draker entered the room. Zeke didn't expect to see him here. The non-commercial introduced himself. He's the groundskeeper, Dexter. Zeke chuckled. Is this bandit a gardener? Dexter unceremoniously asked how the bastard Andre knew he was here. Andre replied that he saw the idiot in the training room, and they infuriated Dexter with their quick wit. Andre told Zeke to return to his studies since he had already recovered. Zeke happily walked towards the door. Dexter shouted after him that if a guy wants to learn something, he should come to the western greenhouse of the academy. Zeke replied that he would never come there and left, leaving the men in the ward. Following him came Dexter's screams that his son was just as bad as his father. Zeke didn't believe Dexter's words that he was the caretaker of the garden. Who is he trying to fool? He has the rank that allows him to call the current head by name. This must be the same man who had only one student in his entire life, Andre Draker. And this man is Duke Draker, who is called the Knight of the Storm, one of the Black Knights. So powerful that he can take on an entire kingdom single-handedly. They said about him that he disappeared without saying anything. Who would have thought that he had secluded himself in the academy? Perhaps Andre came to the ward because of him. Zeke reflected that this was a man with amazing tenacity. It was rumored that he gained the status of Black Knight because he liked the color black. Now Duke has shown interest in Zeke, but the guy doesn't need an easy training. If Zeke wants to learn anything, he should at least learn Duke's secret moves. And he needs to turn Duke's interest into persistence. A few days later, Professor of Magical Theory Fanon was teaching a lesson in a special class. The cadets did not listen to the teacher. Most of them were sleeping. No one answered the teacher's questions. The professor was broadcasting from the pulpit that when creating a form of mana, you can receive damage due to resistance. Zeke Draker raised his hand and said that he did not understand the law of energy transfer that the professor mentioned earlier. The professor was delighted with such a diligent student. He was the first to ask him a question, and he began to explain in detail to the student the law of energy transfer. After the lecture, the cadets loudly discussed that they did not need the theory of magic. Zeke collected his notebooks and thought that the professor was very unusual, although the lecture was quite simple. Zeke was called out by a breathless Professor Fanon. Thanks to Zeke, the professor had a normal class for the first time. So if the boy is interested in something, he can come to his laboratory at any time. Fanon graduated from the Delphoa University of Magic, so he knows a lot. Zeke was dumbfounded. He had no idea that in front of him was a graduate of a magical university where magic originated. He happily agreed to come to Fanon. There is nothing wrong with getting close to a magician. Magicians who are good at math tend to be flexible thinkers. They are much better colleagues than prim knights. Here Zeke stopped because he saw the garden caretaker on a bench in the yard. He's less patient than Zeke expected. A little over a week has passed since their last meeting. The gardener stood up and grumpily asked why the guy didn't come to the greenhouse. He realized that Duke could teach him something useful. Zeke repeated that he was not interested. From such words, Duke jumped 3 meters up. Zeke continued that he understands that his interlocutor is incredibly good, but now he has a lot of individual lessons. Duke raised his hand, which glowed blue, and he slapped the boy with all his heart. Zeke screamed in pain and surprise, and he passed out. He woke up among green grass. When the guy got up, he realized that he was in the western greenhouse. Duke was watering the flowers with one hand and holding the bottle to his mouth with the other. Zeke informed him that he was a kidnapper. Duke didn't deny it. It was exactly like that. He kidnapped the guy because he was interested in him. Zeke activated swift steps and rushed out of the greenhouse. It's not time to learn yet. Duke looked after him with a mocking expression, and he intercepted the guy at the exit. Zeke tried to escape again and used the skill to the limit. Without moving, Duke waved his hand and threw the guy to the ground. Zeke knew Duke still didn't take him seriously. He needed to whet Duke's interest in himself, and he asked what could be interesting about him. Duke replied that he was interested in how quickly the boy's wounds healed. Zeke understood what was going on, and he replied that if he was interested, let Duke force him to answer. Duke looked at the boy, puzzled, and then he disappeared from the place. Zeke turned around in surprise, but the gardener was nowhere to be found. While Zeke was examining the path from which his interlocutor had disappeared, a spinning sword appeared in the air and flew toward Zeke. The tip of the blade was about to hit the guy in the forehead, but Zeke managed to dodge. He drew his sword and took a stance, while shouting at the invisible Duke to think about the consequences. Duke appeared at the far end of the greenhouse and said that the guy himself wanted it, but they can make a bet. If Zeke touches him, Duke will grant him one wish. If he refuses or loses, he will tell Duke everything he is hiding. Zeke Draker could not refuse such an offer, and the fight began. 3 hours passed and Duke wondered where such a strange boy came from. Half of the greenhouse was destroyed. Fragments of stones and uprooted trees lay everywhere. The boy had more than just good stamina. His wounds were restored instantly, and his stamina was limitless, although Zeke himself wouldn't say that about himself. He was very tired after a 3-hour battle. He understood perfectly well that by activating his skills, he could hold out all day, but he would never be able to defeat Duke Draker. He still had one more skill, which he at one time considered dangerous and never used, the power of the dragon. But against the Black Knight, this skill will most likely be the most useful. Zeke activated this skill, and the silhouette of a boy appeared in front of the surprised Duke. shrouded in a purple cloud of power. Duke really liked the new look of his opponent. This is how it should be. With swift steps, Zeke covered the distance that separated him from his opponent and attacked. Duke repelled this attack again. All this time, the Black Knight analyzed the boy's abilities. The guy repeated the same technique. He may be fast, but compared to that bastard Andre or that girl from the Turin family, he is nothing. However, Duke Draker really liked the anger on Zeke's face. She excelled at tenacity. Duke wondered if he should use some aura. At this moment, the dragon's might skill was activated, and a bright golden flash illuminated the fighters. Duke caught and stopped the guy's sword near his face with his hands. Zeke's sword broke, and pieces flew in different directions. Before Duke had time to understand what had happened, the explosion lifted sand and earth into the air, and they formed an impenetrable curtain. It was so unexpected that Duke covered his face with his hand. Zeke Draker has taken away his opponent's visibility, but now it will be difficult for him to find an opponent. But Duke was wrong. The dragon's activated vision allowed Zeke to see what was hidden, and he suddenly found himself behind the Black Knight. In the boy's hands was a fragment of his sword, and Zeke attacked Duke from behind. Duke heard the movement and sharply dodged to the side. A strong wind rose. Zeke waved his sword in vain. His opponent was not visible. He disappeared, and no amount of the dragon's vision allowed him to be found. Was this really Duke's secret trick? A simple jerk caused a current of wind. So that's why they call him the Storm Knight? The wind did not stop, and it was difficult for Zeke to stand on his feet. Duke's face peeked out from the curtain of dust. Zeke did not have time to react to such a sudden appearance of his opponent. The terrifying figure of the Black Knight appeared in front of the guy. The figure suggested that their fight ended in a draw, after which Duke struck, and Zeke flew to the side. Blood sprayed from his mouth, and a fragment of the sword stuck into the ground. Zeke's strength left him. The system reported that due to excessive use of skills, the guy's fatigue exceeded the acceptable limit. For Zeke, his condition reminded him of training with a master, and he lost consciousness. The last thing he saw was Duke approaching him. Zeke Draker woke up in his room on his bed. He decided that Duke had brought him here. The boy stretched, and joyfully thought that he had almost won the fight. He decided that he had done all he could for now, but it wasn't enough. He tried to weaken his opponent's vigilance by repeating the same attack over and over again. And at the decisive moment, with the help of the dragon's power and vision, I wanted to strike him. But unfortunately, this was not enough. That skill Duke used at the end was definitely his secret move. And although Zeke lost consciousness at the end due to overload after using the dragon's skills, he was able to see his secret technique. Those mindless, incredibly fast movements that Duke Draker could use thanks to his extremely trained body. It must have been this secret technique that allowed Andre, who has weak stamina, rise to the level of the Red Knight. Lying on his bed, Zeke regretted that he had missed the opportunity to learn this secret technique, but it was worth it. The dragon's power exerts such enormous pressure that even the Black Knight hesitates. Most small fry would give up as soon as they encountered this skill. The system wedged itself into his thoughts. She sent him an important message. The boy's soul developed due to the manifestation of his strong will. Along with its development, the functions of the system are also activated. The following feature can be activated using karma points. The system offered a mini-map, inventory, and an entry-level quest book. Zeke was interested in the inventory. The system offered to select the necessary items. They will be stored in the inventory. To extract an object, you just need to think about it. Zeke picked up the sword and thought about keeping it. The sword glowed blue and disappeared. He took up 2 cells available in the inventory. Depending on the weight and size of the item, it occupied different spaces. Now Zeke decided to take out the sword, and as soon as he thought about it, the blade materialized in his hand. His experiments with the system were interrupted by Decker. He brought a message for the young master. It was sent to Zeke by the gardener Dexter, and he said that the boy would understand who it was from. In the letter, Duke wrote that if the guy wants to fight again, let him come. Zeke was delighted. It turns out that the opportunity to find out everything about Duke's secret technique remains. Decker said that he complied with the young master's request and found the blacksmith he spoke about. Zeke really needed the blacksmith, and the guy was going to go to him right away. Decker cleared his throat, adjusted his monocle in his eye, and said there was one problem. The blacksmith flatly refused to meet with Zeke Draker. Zeke's jaw dropped. Why else? The reason was simple. The blacksmith no longer made weapons. He drank and slept. Zeke decided to check everything himself, and the next day drove up to the blacksmith's house. He was here in a past life. The name of the workshop, Breath of Papner, always seemed too loud to Zeke. He entered an empty room with empty bottles and broken weapons lying on the floor. Graham's shining sword is a masterpiece created by Galleon, who said it was the price to pay for saving his life. It was rumored that his nickname, the Soulsmith, stems from the fact that he reads the souls of his clients before making them weapons, and he lived up to that title by creating the sword that Zeke Draker needed most. With him, the guy had the opportunity to replace the ether with an aura. What happened to the greatest blacksmith on the continent who forged this sword? The greatest blacksmith finished another bottle of wine, not paying attention to his guest. Soulsmith Galeon Hulbert looked at the boy with a dull gaze and muttered that his forge was not a place for children. Let the kid get out of here. Although the blacksmith had always had an unpredictable character, he had never reached this point. What happened during this time? A bucket of water caught Zeke's eye, and he immediately picked it up. And he threw all the water into the face of the amazed, drunken Galleon. Smiling radiantly, Zeke asked if the guy had come to his senses. The blacksmith looked at the boy with an incredulous gaze, and he continued to say that he was interested in knowing why Galleon rejected his offer. With a shaking hand, the blacksmith touched the gloves on the guest's hands and asked if he could see Draker in front of him. Having made sure that this was so, he hit his head on the counter and asked forgiveness for the fact that the gentleman saw such an outrage. He apologizes again but does not take orders. How can a bastard create what someone else wants if he can't create what he wants? Zeke was surprised that even the famous Galleon had such a difficult period in his life. But if you think about it, Galeon Halbert was already the greatest blacksmith on the continent when they met, and he never told Zeke what kind of life he led before. He probably didn't want to share such a shameful past, but the current Zeke couldn't wait 10 years for the blacksmith to come to his senses. Galeon claimed that he was completely useless and would never be able to make weapons. Zeke interrupted Galeon's groans and asked to show him samples of weapons. We'll have to put this guy on the right path. The blacksmith invited the young master into the backyard, where Zeke saw many swords. They looked very good. Zeke walked over to one sword and picked it up to get a better look. Galeon was worried that the guy wouldn't hurt himself. Without listening to the blacksmith, Zeke examined the swords. These were far from failed works. They were no different in quality from those forged by the best craftsmen on the continent. Then Zeke activated the dragon's vision, and his gaze was reflected in one of the swords. Immediately, everything became clear to Zeke, and he asked Galeon what problems he had with the brazier. The blacksmith widened his eyes when he heard such a question. How did this guy guess? Zeke continued that he knew that Galeon had his own special type of swimwear. He uses multiple types of metals to create a lighter, more refined material. Zeke swung his sword and hit the ground. The sword shattered into pieces. The strength of the sword was poor. This occurs because the impurities present in the metals were not properly removed during the calcination process. The blacksmith stood as if struck by thunder. Everything is spot on. This boy not only learned his method of melting, but also found the main drawback and reason. He asked the gentleman not to consider his words rude, but he would like to ask him something. They returned to the room and Galeon Hulbert took out a drawing from the desk drawer. Zeke learned Galeon's secret, which he revealed many years later. Drawing of a magic brazier. Galeon had no secrets from the one who saved his life in the past. He showed Zeke Draker a magical brazier, the temperature of which is maintained using magic. In the present, Zeke looked at the drawing and confidently said that with this invention, the blacksmith's smelting method would become flawless. But why hasn't Galeon brought the plan to life yet? The blacksmith fell silent in confusion. To do this, you need a diagram of the law of mana energy, but the payment for the magic tower is 10,000 gold. Zeke was taken aback when he heard such a figure. On average, a family of 4 spends 10 gold a month. It will take Galeon about 10 years to collect that amount. That is why Galeon turned to the purebred awakened Draker. If he helps him with the brazier, then the blacksmith will carry out any of his orders while he is alive. Zeke thought about it. It is impossible for him, even a purebred, to receive support of such an amount. But he also couldn't refuse Graham's shining sword. The blacksmith has problems with the law of mana energy. Then a thought dawned on Zeke. Something familiar. Where did he hear this? He took the drawing of the brazier and promised the blacksmith to find out everything from his friend the magician and give an answer as soon as possible. And let the blacksmith stop drinking like he's crazy. Walking past the Draker Academy research building, Zeke wondered why the bastards from the magic tower had such prices. Vel construction is not that complicated. Fanon's specialty is the development of the laws of mana energy. Zeke remembered that his laboratory was located in one of the alleys, from which now came screams and the noise of a fight. Zeke remembered that in such an alley, Leon Conrad often beat him in his previous life. Now Zeke heard crying, and requests to let him go, the same as he had said at one time. He headed straight into the alley, in which a group of boys bullied one. Leyon Conrad beat the boy and shouted that he was trash, just like Zeke Draker. The previously unprecedented golden glow and the awakening of the pureblood are all nonsense. He personally lost to the bastard because of his surprise attack. But the idea that this trash had become a purebred awakened could not fit into Leyon's head. He was furious, which he took out on others. The fight was stopped by the loud voice of Zeke Draker, who told Leyon that he had 3 seconds to remove his hands from the boy. The group of hooligans left their victim and headed towards Zeke Draker. Leyon pointed his finger at him and said that Zeke had become very arrogant lately. But Zeke did not listen to him and ordered him to kneel. Leyon felt a terrifying pressure that was bending him to the ground. Just a couple of months ago, this bastard was crawling at his feet, and now Leyon himself was in his place. How dare the inferior bastard tell him? Leyon Conrad ground his teeth in indignation. He shouted to his accomplices not to stand there, but to hit the bastard so that he would remember it forever. A gang of teenagers rushed at Zeke. The fist of the first attacker was about to hit the boy in the face, but Zeke did not move or try to dodge. He leaned slightly to the side and the enemy's fist flew past. In turn, Zeke hit the guy so that he fell to the ground bleeding. Wasting no time, Zeke Draker dealt with the rest of the gang. Despite the fact that he was attacked from all sides, he managed to respond with powerful blows, which achieved their goal, and mercilessly threw all the guys aside. Zeke repelled attacks by jumping high and fighting with his arms and legs. Leyon, who did not get involved in a massive fight and stood on the sidelines, could not believe his eyes. Is this bastard really the Zeke Draker he knew? Zeke dealt with all of Leyon's accomplices and went to their leader, mockingly telling him not to be afraid. It will only hurt at first. Leyon, hysterical, drew his sword and shouted that the enemy should not approach him. He'll cut the bastard to pieces if he takes another step. He drew his sword outside the arena, and Zeke asked in surprise if Leyon understood what he was doing, and what consequences awaited him. He said loudly that in order to counter the evil intentions of Leyon Conrad, who drew his sword outside the sacred training arena. Leyon interrupted him, demanding that the guy shut up, but Zeke didn't listen to him. He, Zeke Draker, will take all measures with great pleasure. His blade flashed in Zeke's hands. Their fight will end with the death of one of them. All responsibility falls on the loser, and his opponent is freed from remorse and any persecution. Leyon was painful to look at. He turned white as a wall and broke out in a cold sweat. The beaten Liam Stone, who raised his head, was called by Zeke to be a witness. Leyon Conrad fell to his knees and began to beg Mr. Zeke Draker to spare him, and let go. He threw away his weapon and begged for mercy. Zeke remembered that he had asked Leyon to have mercy on him in the same way. He swung his sword and said that as payment he would take Leon's ear. Leyon grabbed his head and his hand became stained with blood. He couldn't believe the bastard did this and cut off his ear. When Zeke was about to leave, the boy he saved suddenly asked why Zeke Draker decided to help him. Zeke replied that he did not help him, and thought that he helped himself, the child whom Leyon Conrad beat and humiliated. In the Academy's research lab, Zeke and Professor Fannin were dismantling the design of the galleon. Fannin said that such an invention is possible, but there are problems that the boy needs to know about. The design is quite simple. However, the problem lies in the core responsible for the power output. The core is the heart of this machine, but the circuitry has extremely complex limitations. The core may be small, but it must be incredibly powerful. We also need to figure out a way to regulate the output force. Fannin had never encountered anything like this before. Zeke asked if such a core was even possible. Fannin had 2 options ready at once. Given the position of the core, he could adjust the drawing. However, everything will take 10 or maybe 15 years. Zeke screamed loudly in surprise and asked Fannin to repeat, "How old?" He didn't understand something. The second option can be tried, avoiding changes and resorting to some alternative, but it will also take a lot of time. They need one item, a high-density mana stone. Zeke's eyes widened again, and he screamed even louder. This is an ancient artifact that cannot be created using modern technology. Fanon calmly confirmed that everything is correct. This is an ancient, rare relic. However, it is not that rare. The mana stone is easier to find than other artifacts, and it is needed according to the available drawings. This stone can be purchased for 3,000 gold. Again, it all came down to money. Zeke completely lost heart. He could be kicked out of the academy if they find out that he never learned to use aura. He can't wait 15 years. 3,000 gold is a lot. I can't even believe that he will have to give up Graham's shining sword. Most people think that Zeke uses aura because of what happened during the blessing ceremony. But this was simply the statue's reaction caused by the ether and healing. Zeke still cannot use aura. Ether, as is commonly believed, is a force that is difficult for humans to control. Zeke couldn't use any sword skill that required an aura, except for the soul spirit skill. But with it, the most he could do was strengthen his body and change the position of the sword in space. Aura in this regard is much easier to use and more versatile. That's why he needed Graham's shining sword. Fanon noted that the creator of this drawing is an amazing person. Even taking into account the complex core, the design is quite efficient. This is very difficult to find, even among the relics of the Golden Age. These words made Zeke jump as if stung. How did he not think of the relics of the Golden Age himself? He asked the professor to save the drawings until Zeke himself returned. Fanon decided that the kid was subtly hinting to him that he should waste 15 years on this project. But Zeke responded with a laugh that everything would be much faster. He will get the professor a high-density mana stone, and very soon. The Golden Age was a war of liberation, during which people tried to break free from the power of dragons. It ended with Draker's victory over the evil dragon Bahamut, giving humanity centuries of peace. Back then, the ancient relics discovered in the Dragon's Lair were remnants of the age of the Hero King and the rise of magic. All these relics, technology and magic were beyond modern standards. Among them was a high-strength mana stone that could satisfy the mana needs of an entire village. It was a relic from the era of the Hero King. Draker Academy had a huge central library. It was rarely used, but was maintained because it was believed to be founded by Therakin himself. During the expansion of the archive's storage, relics from the Golden Age were discovered. Because of this, the Magic Tower and the Archmage of Nirvana, a member of the three great families, were involved in the reconstruction. Within a few months, countless relics were found, and the news was spread in the Continental News Bulletin. All this should happen in 10 years. When Zeke entered the archives of the Central Library, he was sure that no one had yet discovered the relics or even knew about them. You could search for the entrance to the vault all day and not find it, so Zeke needed dragon sight. He looked around carefully and soon found what he needed. One of the slabs that paved the floor glowed with a soft pink light. The guy knocked on the stove and heard a dull sound. This was what he was looking for. One of the uses of ether that Zeke learned from his master was soul spirit, and Zeke used it to cut a slab. Since the ether materializes the user's will, certain properties can be applied to it. But everything has its drawbacks. The user must spend a large amount of ether to perform any action. It was very difficult for Zeke. He cut out the slab and went downstairs, placing the slab in place. He didn't expect the dungeon to be so deep. The boy lit a torch that he found at the entrance. It will be at least 10 years before anyone finds this place. But when Zeke walked a little further, he saw skeletons with shovels in their hands. They stood in the passage and disturbed him. Zeke Draker drew his sword and activated a critical strike. The skeletons scattered into small pieces. It was very simple. Zeke destroyed both skeletons, and the system informed him that for this, he receives 2 karma points. It had completely slipped Zeke's mind that he could get points for destroying monsters. He was too focused on the artifacts. Here it is, his finest hour. He can get a lot of points. There were no small parts left of the next skeleton. Zeke just pulverizes him. In 10 minutes, Zeke gained 20 points. Bones and skulls lay everywhere. The boy had never earned points so easily before. The system rolled out a whole list of what Zeke could get for new points. For the mini-map, you had to pay 20 points. For the book of entry-level tasks, 45. The dragon skill. Devourer and the second-level dragon skills cost 50 points each. Zeke decided to take the mini-map first and activated it. A dungeon map appeared in front of him with a dot that marked his place. It was more like a magic card. He clicked the icon on the side of the card, and the system reported that the 2D card was being converted to 3D. Now Zeke could see the entire dungeon in volume. It was simply amazing. The boy's task became much easier. One of the rooms was highlighted in a different color. Zeke touched it with his finger, and the system asked if he wanted directions to the pantry. Zeke remembered that it took the search party several days to find the storeroom, but he easily determined its location. The system laid out a very complex route to the storage room, and Zeke was completely out of breath. Until I got there, but in front of him was a strong closed door. How can he open it and get inside? Zeke was sure that such a door simply would not open. He put his hand to the door. The door flashed red, and Zeke's arm was thrown back. The security spell prevented entry. He realized that the reason why the Magic Tower and Nirvana's Archmage were attracted was because of this door. If Zeke hadn't been wearing a glove, his arm would have been blown off. He would never be able to break the spell. I wonder if the system will be able to open the door. The system came to life and announced that it was beginning to deactivate the protective spell. The automatic device could not be activated, and the manual device starts to activate. Zeke was dumbfounded by the stunning discovery. The system reacts to his words. The system confirmed that it understands everything. Zeke was shocked to think that he could talk to her, but there was no answer to the questions why he was forced to regress and what the administration system was. Likewise, Zeke did not receive an answer to the question, who created the system? Then Zeke asked her to just open the damn door. The system started working. After a short time, the door was opened. The door opened displeasedly, smoking and hissing. There were treasure chests on the shelves. They were filled to the brim with ancient relics. Zeke opened the first chest and was blinded by the sparkle of gold and precious stones. Zeke decided that he would take it all, and he was very lucky today. Finally, he found what he was looking for. 4 high-density mana stones. There was no way to hide all the finds in the inventory. Zeke had little space. Was he really going to have to come back here until he finished school? Zeke decided that there were enough finds for today, and it was time to leave the dungeon. He went to the exit, but the feeling of danger did not leave him. A strange fog swirled in the corners of the rooms. The ominous sensations grew, and Zeke prepared to face danger. He touched the wall and it flashed red. Crimson rings surrounded the guy, and did not allow her to pass. At the same moment, Zeke disappeared from the dungeon in a red flash, leaving all the chests there. The red rings transported the guy to an unfamiliar place. He struggled to stay on his feet when he landed. Zeke immediately asked the system where he was, and it replied that its exact location is the home of the Dragonslayer. Zeke looked around carefully. The newsletter said nothing about a room filled with coffins. Zeke opened the minimap and examined it. He was not far from where he had been before, but there is no direct passage to the Dragonslayer's house, the storage room. Zeke thought about it. If so, then this could be a hidden area that has never been found before. Of course, he couldn't just leave this place and went to study it. He climbed in to see who was lying in the coffin and found knight's armor there. The system notified him that he had found exclusive Dragonslayer equipment. Zeke began to examine his find, and discovered a hole in the back of the armor. Suddenly a thought occurred to him, and he pulled out a mana stone and stuck it into this hole. The system notified him that he had activated the equipment. The armor sparkled with fire and began to move strangely. The fire was getting stronger. Zeke got scared and asked the system what happened. She replied that the overload caused by the equipment failure caused the activation to fail. The explosion will happen in a few seconds, and the guy needs to take cover somewhere. At this time, the armor exploded, fortunately without causing much harm to the guy. Zeke continued to examine the armor. The source of energy for them is a high-density mana stone. What features did they have that required such a large amount of energy? He decided to ask Fanon about this, but for now he continued his search. The rest of the rooms were empty, except for the last one. There was a glass cube in it. The guy looked into the system to find out what he found and widened his eyes. Therakin Draker was a crazy asshole. The system reported that he had found the legacy of Therakin Draker, the heart of the cursed dragon Bahamut. Just think, this idiot left the dragon's heart as a gift for his descendants. This explained the ominous feeling that had not left Zeke after he entered the pantry. But now the guy had completely different feelings. In the black swirling darkness, he heard a voice that said that he could hear Zeke. The system reported that this is how the dragon's heart reacts to the guy. The voice continued to say that he had no way out and would kill them all. Zeke Draker urgently activated his indomitable mental defense and was able to catch his breath. But it didn't get much easier for him. The voice continued to speak in his head. The dragon's heart in the glass cube flared up more and more. Whirlwinds of ether rushed around the room. Zeke did not understand what was happening here, and the system told him that an urgent quest had begun. This is the test of Therakin Draker. Zeke needs to get rid of the curse that comes from his heart. The reward will be the right to possess Therakin's dying gift. Zeke was speechless at what he had just learned. What other quest? The mental defense class skill stopped working, and Zeke was deafened by a wild roar, in which there was only a thirst for killing everyone around him. Zeke felt a clawed paw on his face, and a voice insistently demanded that the guy obey him and become free. An inexorable force began to pull Zeke Draker into the glass cube. Zeke was able to resist. The voice in his head annoyed him. Will he give him freedom? Freedom, that's what freedom is all about, and the person talking to him is just a stupid bastard. The glass cube shattered into pieces, and Zeke could only keep his head low so as not to be hit. The system came alive and said that he had eliminated the dragon's curse. He is now the heir to Therakin Draker. Zeke thought things would be much worse, and I certainly didn't expect that his skill would fail. He activated the skill of healing and infinite stamina. The system added that he can now absorb. Zeke didn't quite understand what that meant. At this time, a bright ray of light hit him in the chest. Zeke screamed in surprise. He was thrown back. A pure and dense source of mana penetrated into him. But he doesn't have any circles to receive mana. Without a place to store it, all that mana would destroy his body. He needs to do something urgently. He activated the spirit of the soul. With the help of ether, he will hide mana and seal her in the ethereal hole. His face contorted with tension. A whirlpool of fire and dust rose from the place where the glass cube with the dragon's heart had previously stood. Zeke Draker was under tremendous pressure. He could not stand on his feet. He was pressed to the floor. In a few minutes, it was all over. The guy survived, the image of a dragon shining in his chest. The heart disappeared from the room. It seems that this mana really belonged to the dragon Bahamut. Zeke Draker saw his reflection in a cube fragment. Dragon drawing. Was it because he sealed Bahamut's mana? The system told the guy that he had just absorbed the heart of a dragon. Several windows opened in front of Zeke at once. His body was changed to divine. Part of the power that Zeke cannot control was compressed and sealed. As an heir, the guy can open Therakin Draker's library. Zeke couldn't cope with all the information. He closed all the windows to deal with it later. One message caught his attention, and he asked the system to leave it. It seems his ancestor was generous. The system asked if he wanted to open Therakin Draker's other dying gift. Of course, Zeke wanted it, and the system put a small box in front of him. When Zeke saw what was in it, he was surprised to find the right words. He returned to the Platinum Mansion and hid some of the items he had taken from the dungeon into a closet. The time has come to carefully read what new the system offers him. A long message appeared in the status window, detailing the user's titles and skills. Power, dragon control, divine body, healing skills, mental defense, and much more. Dragon's newbie. A spell filled with power was blocked due to the user's lack of experience. Zeke was very interested in physique and power, and the spell would be unlocked once he became stronger. As for power, it was control of the dragon. Zeke can summon dragons under his control and they will do his bidding. And his physique meant that his body was capable of performing at the highest level. The speed of preparation for battle and the transmission speed of the airwaves have been increased. These descriptions didn't really help the guy. A status window also appeared associated with Therakin Draker himself. Zeke asked the system to open this particular window, but it, like the protected library of Therakin, did not open. To open it, it was necessary to update the information. To do this, Zeke needed to go where this could be done. The system opened the minimap and Zeke realized that he had to go to Valhalla. Valhalla is the most prestigious educational institution for training knights. Unauthorized people, except administrators, are prohibited from entering this territory. Zeke didn't even plan to go to Valhalla after the academy. But since there is something connected with Therakin's dying gift, then he should change his plans somewhat. He will have to remain part of the damned Draker family for some time yet. With a sigh, Zeke activated and opened the entry-level quest book. The training has begun. At the end of the training, the system promised a task that would contribute to the user's development. Once it is completed, Zeke will receive a reward. It reminded Zeke of Adventurer Guild missions or mercenary missions. A strange map appeared next to Zeke, and everything was filled with blue light. Zeke found himself in an unfamiliar place, where he stood in an empty space on a caged floor. Was he teleported again? Although this time there was a feeling that this place was different from the past. Zeke felt some movement behind him and turned around. The first thing he saw was a club studded with spikes flying at his head. A ferocious orc was holding onto a club, and he wasn't alone. The system told the guy that he needed to defeat the monsters in the allotted time, using his skills. The time was given an hour. Zeke immediately took out his sword from the inventory. He realized that the training was trying to create situations in which he could take advantage of the system. If he had had something like this in his previous life, he would not have died so ingloriously. At this time, the orcs were attacking the man. 3 clubs crashed into the place where the man had just stood, but he was no longer there. Activating swift strikes and a slash, Zeke fought back against the 3 monsters. The huge Kleinor in his hand seemed light as a feather to the guy. A minute later, the entire battlefield was covered in the blood of monsters. This was probably the result of the divine body. With this skill, you can easily defeat the Purple Knight. The quest was completed, and Zeke returned back. Was it all an illusion? The sensations were very real. The system awarded Zeke bonuses and points for completing the quest. Now he could buy items, and Zeke's eyes lit up at the sight of what he could buy. Flesh of a giant, breath of a fire giant. Here you could buy rare relics that cost a fortune. If you resell them later, you can make money. Zeke closed all the windows of the system and, stretching, walked towards the exit. Today was a difficult day for him. He needs a good night's sleep. At the research center, Professor Fannin asked in surprise how the guy managed to find a high-density mana stone so quickly. Zeke didn't explain anything. He was more interested in how long it would take to prepare the friar now. The professor replied that everything was ready. Zeke felt that Fanon did not trust him much. Every time such mana stones are found on the continent, they are recorded using various ancient texts, and ownership rights are issued to them. Thus, by checking the registration number, you can find out where and when the mana stone was found and the name of its owner. But the stone that Fanon held in his hands was not registered anywhere. The professor checked this in the Encyclopedia of Mana Stone Registration. Zeke knew it was because he was the first to find these stones, but he liked the professor's ability to doubt rather than blindly believe, and also his prudence and skill. He's too talented to rot in a place like this. Now that Fanon had checked everything, they could go to the forge. Galleon immediately tried to start his car. Fanon and Zeke watched him work. The forge glowed with bursts of power and magical spells. Leyon Hulbert was happier than ever. His dream came true. Zeke and Fanon were no less pleased, but it was time for Zeke to go to lectures. He said goodbye to his comrades and ran away. Galleon accompanied him to the threshold and thanked him warmly. Zeke reminded him of what the blacksmith had promised him. Galleon was ready to do whatever the guy asked him to do. Zeke took out the box, opened it, and showed Galleon the contents. Can a blacksmith make a sword out of this? Galleon's eyes widened. He did not at all expect to see in his forge dragon fang, and it was not an ordinary fang but the sharpest fang of the cursed dragon Bahamut. This was Therakin Draker's second dying gift. During his lifetime, Therakin, as it turned out, was an avid collector. The blacksmith suddenly lowered his head and burst into tears. Mr. Draker helped him create a magical brazier, and now trusts him to create a weapon from a dragon's fang. He will do everything and exceed the young master's expectations. Galleon Halbert would create a blade for him, even at the cost of his own life. Zeke remembered that the same situation happened in his past. Then the adult Galleon Hulbert also vowed to create a weapon for him, even at the cost of his life. This guy hasn't changed. Zeke wondered what kind of sword the talented blacksmith would create this time. Galleon immediately got to work, and Zeke was eager to see what he could do. Zeke entered his room in the Platinum Mansion very tired. He spent so much effort creating the sword. After the duel with Duke, a week had passed since Zeke received a letter from him. Something was bound to happen sooner or later, and it happened. Duke personally came to Zeke's room and asked why he didn't come to him in the greenhouse. Duke was so angry that Zeke realized that they wanted to kill him. He lazily replied that Duke himself had written for Zeke to find him when he wanted to fight again, so Zeke had no such desire. Before he could finish speaking, Duke jumped up to him and grabbed him by the chest. He needed to hear the truth from the little shit. He swung and threw Zeke straight into the open window. Taking off, Zeke tried to grab onto something. It's high here, and if he falls, he won't have time to heal. Duke's iron hand grabbed the guy by the neck and didn't let him fall. How did he not have the desire to fight him? He won't believe it in real life. Not showing up to his invitations. What does that feel like? Zeke hung in the air and listened to the Black Knight's claims. He had the feeling that the guy was doing everything to spite him. Zeke has 5 seconds, and he better confess everything. Zeke, despite his position, grinned and said that his interlocutor was very funny. Duke almost unclenched his fingers. Zeke continued that Duke didn't even tell him who he really was. Is he wrong? Who is the real Gardner Dexter? Duke threw the guy back into the room in one motion, and he rolled on the floor. Having hit the wall, Zeke decided that he had received a slight concussion, and Duke at that time admitted that he was right. Duke introduced himself. He was once the Black Knight and his name is Luke Draker. Zeke stood up with difficulty and bowed. He apologized for disrespecting his family member, the noble Black Knight. Duke could not be deceived. He realized that the boy had planned everything. Zeke denied it. Duke turned and walked towards the exit. Zeke shouted behind him that Duke told him that he was the Black Knight. Duke replied that this was already in the past. Zeke had never heard of anyone getting kicked out of the Knights, but Duke didn't want to entertain the conversation. Then Zeke said that he would also tell the whole truth about himself. Duke replied that the boy already knew who he was, and put on this whole performance in order to become his student. Zeke admitted that this was true. Duke noted that the boy has a lot of impudence, but he likes it. Okay, he will accept the boy as his student. Zeke was surprised that everything happened so easily. He decided to act before it's too late. He fell to one knee and uttered the words of an oath. He declares his intention to become a student of the noble Duke Draker, and with his help gain wisdom and strength to glorify the name of his mentor. Duke noted that few people now know the text of the oath, to which Zeke modestly replied that culture is a necessary virtue of a knight, to which Duke said that his teaching is a very cunning little snake. Zeke was very curious. Why did Duke take him as a student? He directly asked his new teacher about this. Duke was known for not accepting anyone. Only Andre, a genius of his century after much persuasion, became his student. So why did Duke agree so easily? Although Zeke had an assumption that during the duel, Duke saw the guy's potential that surpassed Andre's abilities. He immediately expressed this assumption to Duke, and he did not know whether to laugh or cry. If it was a matter of ability, he would have taught Raina Turin better. He liked the guy's tenacity. To reach the level of a red or black knight, talent alone is not enough. The talented never face problems and break down in the face of real adversity. Zeke knew that the most famous geniuses, who were destined for the fate of at least the Red Knights, not only did not achieve this title, but also remained Blue Knights until the end of their lives. Duke decided to stop chatting, and an hour later Zeke was already in the gym of the Western Greenhouse, which he didn't even know about. He had been running in circles for the 3rd hour, waiting for the teacher. Finally, he appeared. Duke attacked the fleeing student without further ado, and grabbed his gloved hand. Zeke snatched his hand away and prevented the teacher from touching it. He didn't want him to listen to his pulse at all. Duke asked what problems the guy had with his pulse. He realized this almost immediately when they grappled in the ward, and then in the greenhouse. And even after Zeke ran 500 laps, Duke didn't feel a drop of his aura. And now he stopped me from checking my pulse. He needs to know the truth. The guy doesn't know how to use an aura? It was a disaster and Zeke couldn't say anything. Duke continued that he saw a bronze statue. Then there was a lot of hype because of the previously unseen golden glow. If that's true, then why won't Zeke let you check his pulse? Zeke couldn't say anything. He lowered his head. He saw that Duke did not suspect him. A Draker unable to control his aura is an out-of-the-ordinary situation. Duke is rather curious. Zeke is very lucky to have Duke in front of him. If the guy can get Graham's shining sword, no one will have any suspicions about his aura. In the meantime, we need to be careful. There is no need to lie further. Unlike his previous life, where he was the first loser to awaken, everything has changed now. He took off his gloves and activated his mana reflection skill. A burst of power lit up the gym. Zeke said that he is indeed a pureblood and has the ability to reflect mana. But for some reason he can't use aura. Zeke hoped that this kind of truth would help him hide his lies. Duke was stunned by the boy's confession. Zeke continued to act out the act and burst into tears. If it turns out that Draker can't use aura, he'll be thrown out of here. He's scared. He extended his hand to Duke so that he could feel his pulse. Duke thought that the guy harbored a grudge that was inappropriate for his age, but he was just a child. However, why doesn't Duke feel his aura at all, despite the fact that the guy has successfully awakened? Zeke understood that even after feeling his pulse, Duke could not be sure how true the blessing ceremony was. Even if it's true that Zeke didn't awaken with the aura, Duke himself will find a reason to explain everything. Duke thought about it and said that most likely it was because Zeke was fickle. This was to be expected. If you don't know the concept of classes, then it's quite natural to think this way. Zeke asked aloud what it was, and Duke said that this term is used for people with abnormal abilities. For example, creating aura and mana at the same time, or the ability to see into the future. People don't treat fickle people very well, so Zeke shouldn't tell anyone about it. Duke considered Zeke unstable due to his insane endurance and ability to recover. Healing internal wounds takes time, and Zeke recovered almost instantly. Duke is sure it took a lot of energy, and this energy was the aura. Since it is constantly spent on stamina and healing, there is almost no amount left for perception. This was Duke's hypothesis. Zeke thought that sounded plausible. He turned to the master with excitement. If he could not use the aura, he would not live up to the teacher's hopes. Duke laughed and asked the boy not to think about it. His storm technique, a special art that does not use aura. In essence, a special art is a special technique created by a knight who has reached great heights. This skill is usually used to kill dragons, so it would be more correct to use aura. But the storm art uses Duke Draker's trained body. And now he will show it to Zeke. Duke moved so fast that Zeke couldn't follow him. A minute later, he appeared in the place from which he began to demonstrate his technique. Zeke asked if the teacher would mind if he now repeated his movements. Duke was again surprised at what a self-confident student he came across. Let him try. Zeke jumped out of his seat, and the amazed Duke saw that his student had disappeared. Mimicking Duke's movements, Zeke clearly saw something he had not noticed before. These steps were made as if he was fighting someone. These are for attacking, these are for dodging. Here he shortened the distance, and here he increased it. Behind every step there is a specific goal. Zeke stopped in front of the amazed teacher, who could not believe his eyes. It's not that a week ago he was nothing at all, but he wasn't that good. What happened this week? Zeke himself knew that there was a big difference between their steps, and Duke was sure that his student was perfect. Zeke asked if this would be enough to get a black rank. Duke would like the guy to have less arrogance, then he would be worthless. A month after the start of training with Duke, Zeke was eating like crazy in the cafeteria. The other students marveled at his appetite. He didn't have time to swallow another piece when Andre came up to him. and asked him to give him some time. Zeke replied that he was ready to listen to him right now, at the table. Andre asked the guy point blank how he managed to persuade Sir Dexter to take him on as a student. Since Andre himself had not yet become Duke's student, the news that Zeke had become one alarmed him. With his mouth full, he replied that he had done nothing. Sir Dexter had suggested it himself. Andre darkened, and he asked if purebredness played a role here. Zeke was taken aback by this question. It seems that Andre has a real inferiority complex. Zeke wiped his mouth and replied that, of course, the teacher was interested in his pedigree. But does Andre really think that Sir Dexter is the kind of person who chooses a student for such a simple reason? The fact that Zeke managed to interest the master is a testament to his abilities. Maybe Andre needs to make at least a little effort. In the Western Greenhouse gym, Zeke and Duke watched as Andre ran laps around the arena. Duke didn't understand what came over the guy. He was very interested. He came and begged the master, stated that he did not mind being his servant, as long as he gave him lessons. Duke blurted out that he would take him if he ran 300 laps without an aura, and this is the result. Andre was already barely crawling. Duke liked the guy's tenacity, and Zeke decided that he was wrong when he assessed Andre as a smug cretin. This guy actually has a very strong backbone.